Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of HudricoLive. I'm your host, Hudrico, and today we have a very special guest. She is a retired professional tennis player, the CEO and founder of the Headstrong LLC, which is a mindset mentorship company. A decorated author, her book, Mastering Your LinkedIn, is helping people build their brand and stand out from other candidates. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have with us the one, the only, Miss Danielle Mills. So sit down, let's learn a little bit about how you can get yourself to what we like to call that championship mindset, because HudricoLive starts right now. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of HudricoLive. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of HudricoLive. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of HudricoLive. And today we taking it to the courts, man. You know, it's set, volley, sir. I'm not good at none of those things, but don't worry. She is, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest today is the one, the only Danielle Mills. Danielle, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for having me.
Listen, the pleasure is all ours to have you out and just bring some of the things that you are doing and some of the magical things that you have done to my listeners and my viewers. So with that being said, let's just get right into it. I mean, you know, let's set game, set, match. Now,
yes.
For my people who don't know, let me give you a little bit of the accolades of Miss Mills. Let me tell you how she rolls. She's a retired professional tennis player. Now, I ain't talking about at the Boys and Girls Club. We're talking about a professional tennis player. She's a podcast host. She's a CEO. She's a founder. She's a mindset coach. So to say she's impactful, I think that would be an understatement. And it just so happens that March is Women's History Month. So I was trying to get some trailblazing women to come onto the show. So I'm going to go ahead and say you completely fit that bill. Who are some of the women who inspired you to help you grow to be and do some of the things that you do, and why?
So there's a lot of women that inspire me, but I'm going to focus on a couple that are actually still around today and everybody can learn and benefit from them. So the first one is actually Serena Williams. And she is so powerful because of what she's been able to do with the sport of tennis. She's always been somebody who's really inspired me. I had the opportunity to meet her at like the young age of like 10. And later on, getting a chance to play in some of the same tournaments with her was pretty cool. And just to see what she's been able to do with the sport, she's truly the GOAT. I will argue anybody out there who says that there's somebody else greater than, because what she's been able to do is incredible. And now being a mom and everything else. So that's one. Number two, I would say, is Oprah. Oprah is somebody who really, really inspires me because of the way she's able to connect with people and talk with people and just pull out the best in others. And she inspires me so much. I had the opportunity last year to actually go to one of her conferences and see her in person. And that was probably one of the most impactful moments of my life. So it was really, really powerful. And I've always followed her over the years, but just to like be a part of what she's doing, that was great. And then the last woman I'll mention is Sheryl Sandberg. She's the current COO of Facebook, and she used to work at Google, but she wrote a really, really powerful book called Lean In. And she was probably the person that impacted my career the most, just seeing how somebody can kind of be a really, really high level executive, but then also manage a family and then manage other things that she's doing. So it kind of gave me the blueprint of, man, this can happen. So I can kind of manage it all. So those are the three that I would say are the most impactful to me.
I mean, you name three pillars. I mean, Serena. I don't know of anybody who doesn't know who Serena Williams is. And if you don't, please, I need y'all to take a look, because what she's done for the game of tennis for females is phenomenal. The last name you mentioned, I wasn't aware of her, so that's somebody for me to even look up myself. Because one thing I will tell you, mentors and people who you can look up to, it isn't divided by sex barriers, about male or female. Amazing people, it doesn't matter. It's non-discriminate. Anybody can be amazing when they bring those things to the table. Now, when you say they help motivate you and get you to where you were, you grew up as an athlete. You made it to become a professional tennis player. I saw one of your previous podcasts or posts where you were talking about how amazing it was to be at a tournament and Venus and Serena were there. So Venus and Serena ain't playing they ain't playing at the local Y. So you have made it to some of the higher levels of tennis. But then you suffered through some injuries. And then life as you know it as a tennis player had to change. Now, growing up as an athlete, when you're in that type of headspace, you're an athlete and nothing else happened. Nothing else even matters. What was your headspace when you had to transition to life after sports? How did you manage that transition?
Well, first I can talk to you about what my headspace was like when I was considering retiring, because that was crazy. I had been thinking about it for a while, almost about 8 months before I actually pulled the trigger and decided to do it. But it was I was in a tough headspace because for my entire life, my body was my source of income, and me working super hard and playing and traveling all over the world, that was what I was doing. But I knew that my body was starting to break down. I knew that I wasn't playing at the level that I used to play. And I was on this like hamster wheel that just kept going. And I knew at that point I needed to take control of my life and my career. And it was really scary because nobody around me knew that I was thinking of doing this. My parents still thought that I was going to be traveling to Mexico the next week. And I abruptly retired. And it was tough because I didn't know what I was going to do next. I was a little bit worried and concerned because A, I'd never been on an interview before. B, I had no formal work experience. And it was a little scary, but when I decided I was really going to do it and I really pulled the trigger, what I did was I pulled out a sheet of paper. I started listing some of the characteristics and skills that I had that I felt could be transferable into other areas. And I currently have a really, really high powered aunt who is a $1 million real estate agent. And we were really similar in personality. So immediately I was like, okay, let me go ahead and try to get into that. So that's what I ended up doing immediately after retiring. And that really set me up from everything else. But I initially had a headspace of being kind of down and concerned, but I immediately had to shift that because once I knew that tennis was over, I needed to transition and do something else. So I knew if I'm going to do something else, I got to go all in. And doing that exercise of kind of listing out my skills and things and seeing, okay, where can I transfer these skills was really helpful.
I want to stay right there real quick. So you said you was in that place where, you made a list. I mean,
yes,
that list is funny because I got a phone call from somebody yesterday. Was just saying, hey, you were talking about retirement. So what pushed you over the edge? And one thing that I told him, I said, you want to take charge of the change before the change takes charge of you, because because you can't control everything in this world. But how did you take that athlete, Danielle, and just put her in a box? Because when you got that mindset, that competitiveness, that's very hard to just be like, okay, I can do these things great, so I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, I'll say for me, like I did have that, I have one little Danielle on this shoulder and another little Danielle on this shoulder. And they're both telling me like, you can still do this. What do you mean? You don't know anything other than tennis. And the other one's like, girl, your body's breaking down. You need to stop. You can't go out on the bottom. And like, they're kind of talking to each other. And like, that's kind of what I was dealing with for those 8 months. But I was considering, what am I going to do next? I had just turned 24 years old, I believe. Yeah, around 24. And I'm like, okay, I'm a young adult. I'm not super young, but I'm not super old either. So like, I still have a chance to get into something else and do it at a very, very high level. If I keep doing this tennis thing, yes, like it's what I know, but I don't want to go out on the bottom. So like for me, even though I knew I could keep going, this from being an athlete and being, having injuries and things, like it's hard to keep going through that when you know that you're not the same. And no matter how much high-end technology, all these surgeries, I tried everything. I did it all. And I just knew it was time. So once I decided and I knew it was time, I was then ready to shift my mindset into something else. And I knew that I could be just as competitive, just as good in whatever else I'm doing. And I actually feel like that has set me up for success even more, having that background of being a pro athlete, because I look at everything as if I'm going to be the best that I can be, where a lot of other people are okay with just being average or mediocre. And it's just like that competitiveness has really pushed me forward in everything that I do.
It seems like what you did, you took that competitiveness from sports and you just said, okay, now I'm just going to be competitive as hell in life. And you taking that drive to moving on to a different mindset, which gives me a great transition to my next thing. You have a podcast. It's called the Headstrong Podcast, where you are focusing on the right mindset. A couple times that we've been talking already, you've mentioned mindset. Talk to me. How important is having that right mindset as you're going through life? And tell me a little bit more about it. So especially for some of my listeners, I'm taking up podcast alert, another great podcast for you. I'm throwing it out there to you. Here you go. Tell me a little bit about Headstrong and about that right mindset that you talk about.
Yeah. So when I developed the Headstrong podcast, it was actually around this exact time last year when the pandemic had just started. And I understood that a lot of people were in a rough space. I developed a company called Headstrong because I knew that everything is connected to your mindset. Your mindset impacts everything, your relationships, your health, your career, anything that you want to do in life or anything that's holding you back in life can almost be directly correlated and connected to your mind and how you're thinking about things. So I knew if I created a company or a podcast, I wanted it to be connected to that. So with the Headstrong podcast, my goal is always to motivate, inspire, and push people to reach their best and bring on guests that kind of share the same vision as me and share their stories. But the biggest thing when it comes to having like that headstrong mind, and the first thing that I'll tell people is to really focus on a life of gratitude. And a lot of people don't expect that, but that is so important because you won't have the right mindset unless you're truly grateful for all that you have and all that you're able to do, because you'll be focused on what you don't have, or things are not going good, or all of the negative stuff that is not really in your control, versus focusing on what you're grateful for, what you do have, the fact that you're even alive, like all these things. And that really helps me shift the people that I work with.
I think gratitude is something that I don't think a lot of people look at. And I think social media, sometimes it hurts us because, for example, you can go on a nice trip. Oh, we just took a trip down to Fort Lauderdale and it was nice and a beautiful day. Then you get on social media and see your friend just took a trip to Angola. And all of a sudden, you don't even care about your trip to Fort Lauderdale no more. You look at the person who took you like, you only took me to Fort Lauderdale. He took her to this, and that. So that gratitude piece is so important. But I think it's something that we should practice being grateful about some of those things. Even if it comes down to daily exercises, to saying, hey, this is what I'm thankful for, making a list, or, giving some of those things out. What do you think?
Oh yeah, that is number one. You got to make a list. You got to do it daily, either in the morning or before you go to sleep. Either way, it's good. But just get in the habit of doing that daily, because it just reinforces you just live an abundant life when you live that way. It's a game changer. And anybody who's listening who hasn't been doing that, I highly suggest starting with at least 5 things daily that you're grateful for. Write them down. Get a little journal. I have a little gratitude and mindset journal you can write stuff down into, but whatever you have, a notebook, just get into the practice of doing it daily.
So keys, everybody likes keys to everything. What are the keys? So keys to possessing the true representation of a headstrong mindset. What would you say those keys would be? Now we know one is gratitude. We know that gratitude. One. We got one. What would be some other keys that you would give?
Another key is going to be make sure that you are saying your positive affirmations. So whatever you want in your life, you want to put that out there into the universe and you speak it into existence. You speak it as if it's already happened, saying I am, or I'm doing, versus I will do, or I want to do, or I hope I can do. It's like I am in the next thing. So I would say that's another key. A third key, which I'll talk about, and we can talk about this for a little bit, is eliminating all of the negative self-talk. So many people on a day-to-day basis, the amount of thoughts that come into people's minds are so negative and they don't even realize it. It's just part of the daily life, but it's really training yourself to, when you get a negative thought, immediately, acknowledging it, but then like letting that go and not letting that impact you. Because if you get that negative thought, but you actually say that out loud, it becomes that much more powerful. So even if you have it inside, you got to let that go, but you cannot verbalize it, because that really puts it out there, and then it becomes your reality. Like, it's really powerful. So eliminating that negative self-talk is huge. And those are some three keys I think are pretty good.
I tell you what, those are 3 keys. And that negative talk is, that is something that I think everybody deals with, because once you let it out, it just festers. It festers and it just boils over and it turns into something else. And next thing you know, you end up being mad about something that you didn't even start. That wasn't even the beginning of the process. You started out when you stubbed your toe. By the end of the day, you hate your job. It can be a vicious cycle that you go down when you start with those negative thoughts. So I definitely think that's something else that's going on. Now, you don't just talk about the mind. You get virtual and you want to master something else. You have an amazing book that I've actually read. Ladies and gentlemen, Hudrico has read a book, and I don't read many, but I've looked at this book. So I'm Hudrico stamp of certification. You have a book about mastering your LinkedIn. Tell me and my viewers why they need to get this book and how it can help them grow their LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely. So why you need to get my book, How to Master LinkedIn and Separate Yourself from the Masses, is because no matter where you are in your life or your career, whether you are laid off or furloughed because of the pandemic, whether you are in a company that you're not happy with, maybe you don't feel valued, maybe you don't feel appreciated, maybe you want to be promoted, you want to get recruited, doesn't matter. Whatever space you're in from a professional standpoint, your LinkedIn is so powerful. Think of your LinkedIn as your virtual resume. It is the first place that people go to see you and learn about you and see what you're doing. And by getting my book, I'm really going to teach you how to brand yourself, how to separate yourself, and how to stand out from everybody else on the platform that's doing it the same old way. And I can help you really, really stand out so that recruiters and other companies can see you and say, wow, I want to work with them. I want to work with her or him, versus you reaching out. They'll begin to reach out to you. And I have a whole strategy on how to do that. And it's really, really powerful, but it works.
All right.
Okay.
So when with LinkedIn, a lot of people, especially a lot of young folks, are like, I ain't doing no LinkedIn. That's for old people. No, that's for grown folks. I need you to understand. You need careers around here. It is not for old people. LinkedIn is for grown folk. Are you ready to be grown? Come on in. But what about 5 common mistakes that you see people make and prevents them from maximizing their LinkedIn?
Okay. Number 1, people think that they only need a LinkedIn when they're looking for a job. And you need your LinkedIn to be good all the time, because you don't want to be reactive. You got to be proactive. You got to be on the platform networking and interacting with folks. So if you're only using the platform when it's time for you to say, I need something new, you're already behind the 8 ball there. Number 2 is people don't think that they should be connecting with people that they don't know. So it's a big misconception. On LinkedIn, a lot of times people treat it like it's a Facebook or Instagram, where if they have a connection request from somebody that they are not familiar with, they don't accept it. Whereas with LinkedIn, you want to connect with as many people as humanly possible, because the more connections you have, you then become connected to their networks, and it keeps spreading out like a web. And if you limit yourself to just connecting with people you don't need to know people you know. You need to know people you don't know. So that's number 2. Number 3 is people don't think that they should engage and comment and like on other people's posts. That is a big misconception, because from what I see on LinkedIn, I'm going to botch these numbers, but there's millions of people on the platform. And I think only like 5 or 6% of the millions of people actually are posting content. And of that, we find people that do post content is there's a lot of people watching, but not a lot of people engaging. And if you separate yourself by engaging on a post, writing a nice long message where you can actually weigh in, give your 2 cents, comment, you are going to get seen by everybody else who's just watching because they're afraid to comment. And then they'll be like, wow, I like how that person talks, or wow, I like that person's point of view. And they might click on your profile and start engaging with you. So that's a big one. I think I'm on 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one. People don't think that they should be posting themselves. And that's a huge misconception. You got to be posting, whether it be once a week, once every 2 weeks. I mean, if it's my suggestion, I'd say at least once a week, but you just got to be consistent and putting stuff out there where you can share with your audience why you are the expert in the field that you're in, because that is so critical. And the last thing I'll say is they don't keep their LinkedIn up to date. People do not update their LinkedIn and make sure that it's actually accurate. They're waiting, like I said, for the first point until, man, let me update this, or let me focus on this when I actually need a new job. Well, no, it needs to be perfect and up to date at all times, because remember, it's that virtual resume. When people are Googling you, your LinkedIn is coming up. When they're looking for you, your LinkedIn's coming up. So you want to make sure that that is the most accurate description of you, your accolades, your skill sets, and why you are special. And that's going to make people reach out.
Now that's a 5 that you should be linked into.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Yes.
Honestly, with the LinkedIn piece, one thing that you mentioned, I think it was number 3 when you said, well, people don't engage. And I've noticed that. Like, I'll post something, I'm like, nobody gonna say nothing? Like, but I think it's because
you see that they watched it.
But you see that they did,
because it gives you see the metrics. Like, you may have 2,000 views, but 20 comments or 20 likes, and you're like, that doesn't make sense. But people are seeing, they're just afraid to comment, and they need to be commenting. And I'll help you.
And I think one of the reasons why people don't comment, because LinkedIn, for some reason, people get this idea, this is the boardroom. When you're on LinkedIn, you're at the principal's office, and nobody talks at the principal's office. You don't do that. But it is a great space to get in and because of some of the stuff that I've got from your book is why I started posting. I've updated I can't give y'all too many secrets. You got to get the book. Y'all got to get the book. I can't.
Yes.
See, I had to hold back. I was about to tell them something. I can't tell them yet.
Don't give it all to them.
I can't give it all to them. Listen, we gave y'all 5. I can't give y'all no more than that. Now, when I've been following you on social media for a while. Now, when I see you on social media, man, I mean, between some of these epic and beautiful scene workouts you be doing, I mean, you just picked the perfect weather. I mean, the lavish dinners, the views. I'm coming to that apartment one day. I want to look out over that balcony. The view is absolutely spectacular. People would say, man, Danielle Mills, life is good, man. I mean, life is grand. But sometimes people think that it just happened that way, that you didn't have to go through anything to get to where you're going through. Help them understand that you didn't just wake up and be like, okay, I live in Brickell. Everything's great. How do we get to where you are now?
Well, you know what's interesting, and I'll tell people the power of manifesting is when I was 13, I want to say 12 or 13 years old, I had 2 things that I wanted in my life. Number 1 was to drive a Range Rover. Number 2 was to live in a high-rise in Brickell. And those were the 2 things that I really, really wanted out of everything that I could possibly want. Those were the 2 things because I had a chance to see a glimpse of what it looks like to be in a high rise. And I always was admiring Range Rovers. It's like my favorite vehicle. So by putting that into the universe and focusing on it and putting it on vision boards and focusing and doing those things, working closely towards that, proud to say that I do have those 2 things now. Now I have new things on my vision board, but it's like, that's the power of manifesting and the power of putting things out there. And to your point, I work really, really hard to get to where I am, but I also am somebody who likes to share what's happening and share the positive that's going on. And I like to share things because I want people to know that you have to enjoy life. You have to be happy about what you're doing in the spaces that you're in. And I know I feel really blessed that my fiance and I get to go to a lot of nice restaurants. We have a really good time. We like to travel. We like to do things, but we've worked very, very hard to get to this point. And I will say though, for people on the line, you have the ability to do a lot of nice things without having to break the bank too, because we are the type to want to figure out how we could save too. So a lot of stuff that you guys see appears really, really great, but we didn't have to pay a ton of money to be there or to be a part of these things because of, a lot of things we look up and research and stuff. So it's all about, especially like the self-care stuff I do. I'm really big on self-care and treating yourself. Like I try to get 2 to 3 massages a month, but I'm not breaking the bank. I have a Massage Envy membership. I pay $65 a month, but because I care about self-care and I make it a part of my life, but I'm not breaking the bank to do it. But I'm putting that stuff out there and people are curious. They can reach out to me because there's a lot of ways you can do things without having to break the bank. But I do like to share what's happening. And, I'm blessed to have these things. So I like to share them with others.
And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, when you have it, go for it, because at the same time, you're just out there living your life. And I always tell people, if you don't like what I'm posting, you can always unfollow, if that's what because at the end of the day, I'm going to be me and be who I am. So I'm going to flip this on you for the last question. Yeah, I had to give you something. It wouldn't be me if I didn't come with something, but I think you'll like this question.
All right. Okay.
I want to talk to my female listeners who are out there, who are young, that young, early 20s, 25-year-old female who's trying to trailblaze her way into life, who sees a young lady like yourself or the people that you mentioned earlier and says, oh man, how do I get to that point? That looks nice, but I don't know if I can ever get to that point, because everybody has a little bit of self-doubt. And I know we always talk about that negative thought, but what advice do you give the young lady who's trying to grow up to be that female boss like yourself? What do you tell her?
I would say 2 things. Number 1, I would say focus on being in the present and enjoying every moment that you're experiencing, because you're on a journey. Life is a marathon, not a sprint, popular quote. And the second thing is, don't compare yourself and your progress to others, because it's so easy with social media to look on Instagram and see these millionaire, billionaire kids that are 18, 19 years old with YouTube and TikTok and stuff and think like, oh, why don't I have what they have? But you're on a completely different journey than them. Whatever you want to do, you got to focus on that and just know that your time will come, and don't keep looking around. Keep your blinders on and stay focused on what your goals are. Because if you're always comparing yourself to others, that's just, robbing you of joy. So you just got to focus on yourself and focus on your goals and your aspirations, because it's your journey and you will hit when it's your time, and everybody has their own time.
Oh man. I mean, I don't know what else I can give you. So this brings me what I like to call to the final timeout. For the final timeout today, ladies and gentlemen, you can do what you want to do, but what it's going to take is the right mindset. If you have got nothing else from this, the championship mindset that you're going to need, it takes place between your two ears. And you got to have the gratitude. You got to look at what you have and say, hey, I'm thankful for this. Putting those right positive affirmations in your mind, like Danielle mentioned. These are the things you have to start doing, and writing down what you want and saying, hey, I'm going to get to whatever point that I'm trying to get to, because your path is not going to be the same as somebody else's. No matter who you are, what you do, you can have what you want if you go after what you want. But you got to have a tenacity, and you got to take charge of the change before the change takes charge of you. Boom. We like to thank our guests for coming on today. Ms. Mills, thank you for taking the time, for setting the match for us. Volley, ace. No, none of those. Did I say none of those? Okay.
That works, yeah.
Okay, boom. But before we let you go, how can my people follow, get with the book, tune into the podcast? How can they find themselves inside of the Headstrong Podcast, inside of what Ms. Mills is doing? Give us the information.
Yeah, so the best way to get a hold of me is strictly just Google Danielle Mills. Luckily with that, my Instagram pops up, the book website pops up. My Instagram is Danielle_Nicole_Mills. And with that, you can get to everything. But and on Amazon, if you just search my name, my book pops right up. So just Danielle Mills, it's just the easiest way to get to everything. And connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with me everywhere. Can't wait to see everybody, but I appreciate being on here. This has been awesome. Now I'm like jacked up and excited to start my day here. This is great.
Boom. And that's what we want to do. And before we go, we got to also make sure we thank you our supporters, our Patreon supporters, the Brown family, the Aziz family, LaShawn Kermani, Jamie Tate, the Franklin family, Brick House Barbecue, Miss Carla. I mean, there's so many people. William Boston. I thank everybody who is supporting the podcast and what you do, because without you, HudricoLive, it'd be a little tougher to do, but we do it because of you, and we do it for the people who's out there. We'd like to thank all our guests. If this is your first time, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and tune in to the next episode, because that's another episode of HudricoLive in the books, and we out.